So I did lots of things, and I traveled all over the world. I was very fortunate to have done that. You'll see that. This is my Harley Davidson. When they're 70, you need to have a Harley. So we'll talk about the animals of Alaska. So nobody's been to the United States, so apparently nobody's been to Alaska. This is Alaska. Alaska is the 49th state. We started out with 13 colonies, and over hundreds of years, more and more area on the continental United States became states. Finally, Alaska was the 49th. Anybody know what can they think about what the 50th state might be of the United States? Another state that's not connected to the other ones. Hawaii. Hawaii was the 50th state. But Alaska is up north, and I've traveled all over Alaska many, many times, and they have very unusual animals. This is the state flag. Anybody know what that is? Those are stars. Anybody know what that is? It's a constellation. How am I doing on language? You okay with what I'm doing? Maybe not. Can you understand me? Yes? Okay. So what do you think this star formation is? Anybody know?
Small dot.
It is, we call it the Big Dipper. Yeah, it's Urus Minor, I think is the actual term. And these are some of the animals that we're going to see. And they have a lot of interesting animals. Anybody know what this animal is? It's caribou. This is a grizzly bear. This is a doll, D-A-L-L, doll sheep. That's a puffin. This is a bald eagle. How about this? This is one of my favorite Alaskan animals. Anybody know what? That's a survivor of the Ice Age. That is a muskox. And they were around at the same time where there were woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers, and they survived the Ice Age. This is a killer whale, and that is a wolf. This is a black bear. That's the tail of the whale. This is a stellar sea lion. That's a moose. That's a polar bear. And this is a sea otter. And this is an ice worm. This worm lives in the ice of the glaciers in Alaska. Very strange. Little tiny worm. Now, if you walk out your front door and you see a rhinoceros, you're not in Alaska. If you go out, you know who this guy is?
You?
Yeah.
You?
Years ago, but you can see I'm already turning color here. This was in Zimbabwe, in Africa. This is in Wadi Rum in Jordan, in the Middle East. How about the giant Peruvian cuy? What do you think? Somebody accused me of photoshopping.
Yes, Photoshop.
No.
You don't think that the giant Peruvian cuy, do you know what a guinea pig is?
Yeah.
Look, well, in Peru, they eat guinea pigs. So I did Photoshop that. They don't get that big. Alaska is up in the north, and it used to belong to Russia back in the 1700s. And the Russians needed money, so they sold it to the United States in 1860. And everybody in the United States thought that was a terrible investment, that we'd wasted our money buying this vast wasteland. But it turned out that there's all kinds of gold and oil and all kinds of stuff in Alaska, so it was a good deal, actually. It's the largest state in the United States, and I'm going to show you a picture here. And it's interesting that, as I say, there's fishing, there's salmon, there's crab. Some of you, if you watch the television here, you know there's a show where these people are up in Alaska, Dutch Harbor, fishing for crab, like that. Okay. Whoop. There we go. Okay. 1867 for 7.2 million US dollars. $4 a square kilometer. Pretty good deal. Now that's Alaska. If you take the area of Alaska and put it over the United States, that's how big it is. Stretches all the way from Georgia up to North Dakota and out to Colorado. It's got 738,000 people in it. That means that Bosnia and Herzegovina is almost 5 times more population than the entire population of Alaska. However, that's Alaska if you take the land area and put it over Europe. Stretches all the way from Athens up to Denmark, down into the Straits of Gibraltar, and there's only 750,000 people living in that. And that, yet it's almost, I'd say, 3/4 the size of Europe. And that shows you where it is. It's up here, and it stretches down into what's called the Panhandle. And these are the roads. You can see there's a whole area here where there are no roads at all. It's very interesting. Many people have airplanes. They have airplanes with floats on them so they can land on rivers or in bays and on lakes and in the water, because there's a lot of that there. Now, how did we see these animals? Well, backpacked. We went on several cruises, a lot of sea kayaking. A sea kayak is a kayak that can go on the ocean. It's not like the river kayaks that they use here to go through the rapids. It's much longer, as you can see. It's actually about 7 meters, 8 meters long, depending on the kind. It's got a rudder that you control with foot pedals, and you can make it watertight. It goes around your waist and fits over an edge on the cockpits, and water can break over the kayak and it won't get inside. And we've done this all over, a number of places in the world, but a lot up in Alaska. And you can see this picture. This is a glacier. This is huge amounts of ice that are coming down off the mountains and coming down into the ocean. Well, let's look at the grizzly bear. Grizzly bears. Grizzly bears are big. They weigh up to 360 kilograms. And they are, here's one of our words for the day, they are omnivorous. Anybody know what that word means? Omnivorous.
They know.
They do.
They know, they said
They said in local language.
Oh, okay. You can actually talk to me too, Omnivorous means eat everything. Most people here are omnivorous. Humans are omnivorous. We eat meat, most of us do anyway, and we also eat vegetables. And they eat berries, but they'll also eat meat if they can catch it. And it's a little bit hard for them to catch, but it's interesting to see them. They have to store up fat because they hibernate. That is, when the winter comes, and realize that winter there is 8 months long. Spring comes in June, winter comes in October. And so they sleep a significant part of the time, and they have to eat like crazy. And they eat berries, and they eat, they'll occasionally catch a caribou, and they're big, and they have to eat a lot. So these are pictures that I took. This is a yearling cub. That is, this young bear is 1 year old. And that's how big they've gotten from this, which is fairly recently born, to this in 1 year. So they're eating a lot. And the mother bears are very protective, and that's where you can really get into danger. If you, they don't see very well, but they smell pretty well. But if you get where the wind is not blowing towards them, you can get up fairly close to them. And so what we do when we backpack is we have a bell, a little silver bell. So every step you take, the bell goes ding, ding, ding. They can hear well too. And that way you don't sneak up on them if they have cubs. This bear, as you can see, this is the tidal line. Up in Alaska, the tides may, in some places, be as much as, say, 15 meters. So low tide is here, and then high tide is 15 meters higher than that. And this is called the tidal zone. And there's little crabs and sometimes fish and get caught up in there. And this bear is walking along, turning over rocks, trying and eating whatever they find. Bald eagle. This is the national bird of the United States. What's the national bird of Bosnia? I don't know. What's the national bird of Bosnia?
Pigeon?
The pigeon? I don't think so. Anyway, if you look at our flags, oftentimes on the top of the staff of the flagpole, there'll be an eagle. And eagles, these are called bald eagles, not that they're bald, but that their heads are white. And in Alaska, they're everywhere. When you first go to Alaska, you go, oh my God, there's an eagle. There's an eagle. And after you've been there a couple of days, you go, get out of the way. There's another eagle, get out of the way. I mean, they're everywhere. And the thrill is gone pretty quickly. But this one is flying. I was just able to catch that one just as it took off. My favorite animal, the muskox. Now you know what happened back about 30,000 years ago. All the northern areas, not in the south, but in the north, were covered with ice. Huge. The temperature was much colder, and there were lots of very unique animals. There were huge woolly elephants called mammoths that they walked all over northern Europe and all over the northern United States. They also had woolly rhinoceros, and these were much bigger than elephants today or rhinoceros today. They had saber-toothed tigers. They had all kinds of very strange animals, and one of them was the muskox. Now, most of those animals died out as the ice receded. It was interesting, I was just reading about that recently. There are two things that did that. One was that it snowed a lot more after the ice receded because there was more water, more moisture in the atmosphere. And that covered up the fields of grass that these animals ate. Most of them were herbivores. Omnivores eat everything. Herbivores only eat plants. Carnivores only eat meat. So saber-toothed tigers don't eat grass, they eat woolly mammoths. But these animals survived, and they are amazing. And I have seen these in the wild. We were up in the northern Yukon, and there was a herd of muskox. And if you look closely, they have hair, you see, that comes down right to where their little knees are. And these are called guard hairs. They're very thin, but they're very strong, and it acts like a raincoat or a snow coat. And underneath that, they have a very, very fine, soft wool that keeps them warm.
Sorry,
And
how many time you need to find them on Alaska?
they're not very prevalent, but where we were on that trip, we were walking in an area that people had not backpacked in for decades. And so there was a herd of them across the river, and they were being stalked by wolves. That is, wolves were hunting them. And what these animals do, they take their young and they put them in the middle. They form a circle, and they put their young, the little, what called calves, put the little ones in the middle, and then they take these, they have a big flat plate that you can't see. It's covered here. Let's see if we got it there. Yeah, this here. And they get shoulder to shoulder and form a circle. And the wolves ran around, and ran around, and ran around, and then they said, "Ah, no lunch today," and off they ran. And then the muskrat. This is actually on a farm. They are trying to domesticate them. Do you know what that word means, domesticate? We have animals that are domesticated. So for example, cows. You know, cows will let us milk them and they will do what we want them to do. Horses are domesticated. They have been attempting to domesticate these animals so that the local people can get the wool, because the wool is very, very soft, very warm. So they want to use them like you would use sheep to get wool from the sheep. And they have been doing this, they have been breeding these animals for 50 years. And I said, how long is it going to take to domesticate them? How many years do you think it will take to domesticate them? And they said, we estimate it will take 200 years to finally get a breed of muskoxen that will allow themselves to have the wool taken off. 200 years. Only 150 years now, because they've been doing it for 50 years. Amazing animals. And these are wild animals. These will hurt you if you get too close to them. You can see this is a bull. They're big and strong. Caribou. Caribou. Caribou are often called reindeer. Who has reindeer? Santa Claus, right? He has flying reindeer. These don't fly. Never seen one anyway. They get these tremendous antlers, and they shed these antlers. The antlers fall off every year. And so you find these antlers all over the place up there, because there are millions of these caribou, and they migrate. That is, in the summertime, they go from the south right up to the border of the Arctic Ocean, and that's where they have their young, and then they immediately turn around and start heading south again. And I have been very fortunate to have seen them in several places. You look closely, all those little dots there, every single one of those is a caribou. They estimated there's probably 10,000 caribou in that picture. And we were at a camping place in the northern Yukon, in Alaska. It was on the Congonicut River. And we were camping there, and nobody else that year went down the Congonicut. We had to get a bush pilot. A bush pilot is an independent pilot who has a special aircraft that can land where there are no runways, on river bars. And he flew us from Fort Yukon, Alaska, up onto the Congonicut River. And we rafted down, 250 miles, I don't know how long that is in kilometers, about 400 kilometers down to the Arctic Ocean. And while we were doing that, one day we were camped and we noticed on the mountain there's no trees. We're well above the tree line. When you get far north, there are no trees. It's just grasses and bushes. And we noticed there was something breaking, coming over the top of the mountain, and we looked with our binoculars, caribou. And thousands of caribou walked through our camp for hours, all night long. We finally went to bed. It was just big. But when we were up there, remember, we are above the Arctic Circle. Does anybody know what that means? Why they call it the Arctic Circle? They call it that because at least one day a year, the sun never sets. So we were 400 miles above the Arctic Circle. We were up there for 3 weeks, and the sun never set. It was light 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because the sun just kind of went up in the sky and down in the sky, rolled around, but it never set. And that's when these animals were walking And we were right in the middle of the porcupines. It was the porcupine caribou herd. What an experience. This will eat you. This thinks you're a funny tasting seal. That's what they eat. And they're enormous. They're the biggest bear species there. You can see 700 kilograms. And they're white, and they hunt out on the ice when the ice freezes. And in the summertime, there's one place in Canada called Churchill, Manitoba, where a lot of polar bears come to spend the summer when there's no ice out on Hudson's Bay. And that's where I got these pictures. And you can imagine, this bear is in town. He's walking on a road. This is a problem for the people that live in Churchill. You walk out your door and you find there's a polar bear out there who might be hungry. You look good. So they have to tranquilize them, and they have a polar bear jail. They have converted a hangar, an airplane hangar. They have built cells in there. They tranquilize the bears and put them in there if they're getting into the garbage dump or bothering people until the bay freezes, and then they let them go. And I understand they run like crazy right out onto the ice. I didn't take that picture. Apparently that bear doesn't like Coca-Cola. It must be a Pepsi bear, I don't know.
Another Photoshop.
I would think so. Humpback whales. We were absolutely fortunate on one of these cruises to be in the middle of a pod. Now you know animals in English all have names for groups of animals. So you have a herd of cattle, for example, or horses. Now, you have crows here. You know what a crow is? A bird, right? You know what the term for a group of crows is? A murder of crows. And baboons is it's a parliament of owls and a troop of baboons. It's a pod of whales. These, as you can see, they're up to 16 meters long, and they are, let's see, where does it say? 36,000 kilograms. They're huge. And they have these flipper-like things. And they don't eat fish. They eat krill. Krill are tiny little shrimp. Very tiny, almost microscopic. And they open their mouths. I might have a picture of that. Here. What you're looking at here, well, this is a whale's nose. You know where a whale's nose is? On the top of their head. Because obviously they can breathe because the vast majority of their body's underwater. This is a whale eating, and this whale has a very special feature. It's got a ridge of almost like wire, and it takes in a huge gulp of water. This is its lower jaw. This is its upper jaw. This is its tongue. And it takes this water in and then blows it out. And the krill gets stuck. And then it takes its tongue, and what you're seeing here is it takes its tongue and licks the inside of that to get the krill. And this animal that weighs 36,000 kilograms eats almost microscopic things, and you imagine how much of that each day they'd have to eat to be able to survive. So I took all of these pictures, and it was amazing. And they actually have barnacles. These are like oyster-like things that will actually grow on the body of the whale. Everybody knows what that is. That's the big bad wolf. And wolves play a very important part in the ecosystem. In our country, in the contiguous 48 states, that's the one that makes up the bulk of the country, they had killed off almost all the wolves. But we are reintroducing wolves because of their unique role in the ecosystem. And they look like dogs. Kind of looks like a German Shepherd, doesn't it? Although it's got blue eyes. And every dog in the world from the little tiny yip dogs in people's purses to the great big mastiffs and Saint Bernards and all of it. Every dog is descendant from wolf. And it says here, every dog has 99.8% of the mitochondrial DNA of a wolf. So if you see a little Pekingese or a little yippy dog out there, remember, there's a wolf inside. And they go in packs. So a group of wolves is a pack of wolves. And they are very skittish. They're very frightened of humans because for years humans have been killing them. So they don't present very much of a threat to us, but occasionally they will. We have a moose. I've had to blow that picture up a little bit. Moose have, as you can see, great big horns, and they're big animals. The biggest problem in Alaska is people hitting them with cars. If you hit a moose with a car, usually the moose doesn't survive, but it wins. It will smash your car to pieces because it's so big. And they're all over. There's lots and lots of them, and they like marshy areas. They get down in along where the reeds and things grow and graze there, and all of these were. This is in Glacier Bay, and this is in Denali National Park. Little tiny rodent-like things called pikas. And the pikas, when you're out, they make a very distinctive whistling sound. And that's their alarm as you walk along. The other thing that'll happen is if you leave any food around, these things will get into it immediately. I mean, they are not shy. The last thing is grizzly bears, this must be like grizzly bear cocaine, because the grizzly bears want to eat these. And you will see grizzly bears digging huge holes trying to get a hold of these things. So it must be good. I've never eaten one, but apparently they must be pretty good. Grizzly bears love them. There you go. And that's about, right there, that's about life size. That's about a big deal. How about that? Up close and personal. Had really fishy breath. Needed to brush his teeth. He's stumbling. These are stellar sea lions, and they're big. There's a number of different seal-like animals, but these are the biggest ones, and you can see they're almost 3 meters long, and they are in pods as well. I took this from a kayak. Actually, these were just a bit too close for comfort. And they're very curious. You can see they're looking, and look at how many there are here. There were just huge numbers of them. They eat fish. They'll go out and eat fish. They'll eat salmon or whatever the fish happen to be. And they will then sun themselves on these rocks. That's a male, and they make a bellowing sound. Very, very interesting to see them. Dall sheep. Dall, D-A-L-L, Dall sheep, named after a guy named Dall. And they're these white sheep with these big horns, and you will see them all over the mountains, and they can get up very high where things like grizzly bears can't get them because they're up on the rock faces. Orca, called a killer whale. Doesn't mean that it'll kill you. It actually means it's a killer of whales. These animals will kill other whales, like the humpback whale. They will attack in a pack. So a number of individuals will attack a big whale and take big bites out of it and eventually kill it and eat it. They also eat salmon. I was in a kayak in the very south of Alaska when we took that picture, which again, you know, you take, thank God for digital photographs, because you take 500 pictures and get one good one. But those are all killer whales with these big dorsal fins. And one time we were sea kayaking across a strait of water, and you could hear the whales, because when they came up to breathe, They would, and there was so many of them coming, it sounded like a train. And we looked and saw them, and we were out in the middle of this water, and you realized that if they continued on, they would surface right under our kayaks. But what they did, they were aware of us. They went down, and they gave an extra tail flip, and they came up just on the other side. Almost reach out and touch them. It was amazing. Black bears, Smokey the bear. We have a program in the United States to prevent forest fires. Smokey the bear. And Smokey has on a ranger hat, and he has pointing, and he says, "Only you can prevent forest fires." I first saw that poster when I was 5 years old. And I thought, only me? I'm the only one that can prevent forest fires? How at 5 years of age am I going to prevent? I was worried about that for at least 6 months. But it turns out that that wasn't it. Black bears are everywhere. And they're smaller and they're not as aggressive, but if you get in amongst the cubs again, you can run into trouble. How do you like that? That's a horned puffin. And that's a real bird. You know, there's no Hollywood makeup here. This is the way it really looks. And it is a very interesting animal, and it actually has to run on the water to get going fast enough to be able to fly. And there's another type of seal. This is a harbor seal. They're much smaller than the stellar sea lions. And the way they keep warm is they have a big layer of fat under their skin, and that's the reason they can swim around in this Arctic water and lay on ice in a glacier and not get cold. That is an ice worm. That lives in the ice of a glacier. Now it's very small. I'll show you here. This is a pencil, so you see how small. But in certain places, these things are living in the ice. Really very strange. I'm not sure how they do that, but they're able to do it. And that's a picture of some ice worms from the glacier, from the Mendenhall Glacier. We're very fortunate, and I've been very fortunate to go a number of times to Denali National Park, a huge area in Alaska, and that gives you some idea of the way the landscape of Alaska looks. A lot of mountains, most of them covered with snow. This is called tundra. Under this layer of vegetation is often pure ice down maybe 100 meters down in the ground. So camping is very difficult on this. That was evening. And there we are in our kayak by the glacier. And Alaska was an amazing place filled with amazing animals. And I hope one day you get a chance to see that and to travel to the United States and see our country as I have been blessed to be able to travel and see your country here. So this is the animals of Alaska. That's me. And now you can ask me all those probing questions that you've always wanted to ask an American.